I would now like to bring to the stage one of my favorite perennials, another phrase I love. He's my president, Lord Mark Price. You will know him as the guy who ran Waitrose for decades and was the deputy chair of John Lewis. But in true Aviva fashion, he has now reinvented himself. Not only does he write children's books, but he's a successful entrepreneur and has launched something called WorkL, which actually fits beautifully with CMI's purpose because it's about how happy are you at work, and he's going to share with us some wonderful insights into what women think about work and how happy they are. Lord Mark Price, welcome.
Very wonderful and generous. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm going to do things in reverse order. I'm actually going to start with some thank yous rather than end with some thank yous. To start with Aviva, who is absolutely brilliant, and I was delighted was part of the Everyone Economy working group and gave us great input along with our other members, but it's always wonderful to hear you speak. I'd like to thank Bob Crine, who's the president of this illustrious organisation and whose building we're enjoying this conference in. I'd like to thank Anne. Anne has been a tireless campaigner for women in the workplace and inclusivity. And you've done an amazing job, Anne, so thank you for all you've done. Dr. Heather Melville, who was on a panel earlier, who was the chair of the Women Advisory Committee at the CMI until recently when Tamara Box took over, and this is Tamara's first conference. So Tamara, well done on your first conference. And then lastly, but by no means least, to the event team at CMI, led by the brilliant Joe, who've put on another fantastic event. Thank you very much, Joe. It's been a great event. So, I think I've got a flicker here. So, inclusivity. What I want to share with you is data and facts, and I haven't got long to do it. So if this feels rushed, my apologies. But I want to show you where you can find data so that when you want to, at your leisure, you can reflect more generally on the stats I'm going to give you. I read archaeology and ancient history at university, so only appropriate I start with a Plato quote. Plato said, "Opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance." Now, when I joined the John Lewis Partnership in 1982 as a graduate trainee, I was told on day one that the supreme purpose of the organisation, written in its constitution, very few governments or countries have constitutions, let alone companies, was that the supreme purpose was the happiness of the people working there. And what I was told is if you have a happy and engaged workforce, you get better commercial results. And I'm not going to go through at length where you can find that information, but there is lots of information that shows you that companies that have happy and engaged workforces have lower levels of staff turnover, lower levels of sick absence, profits are higher, earnings per share are higher, productivity is higher, waste is lower. And we've done lots and lots of work that shows the actual commercial benefits of having an inclusive and engaged workforce. So, lots and lots of data. So when I left the government 5-6 years ago, I decided that what I would try to do was collect as much data as I could and to share that data. And the reason I did that was that the guy who set up the John Lewis Partnership, whose idea it was to have happiness as a supreme goal, said, if you are going to have a happy and engaged workforce, the number one thing you need is to inform your workforce. Knowledge is power. Only by individuals in the workforce having knowledge of the organisation will they be able to affect the change that you want them to affect. So I, along with a very talented woman who was our CTO, built a website. It's free to use. It asks 21 questions, and we measure how happy people are at work. We work with organisations, but it's also crowdsourced. So 5,000 people a week, 5,000 people a week go to our website and they take the test. So we've collected loads and loads of data. We've got data on 26 industries. We've got data on organisations in 105 countries. And in total at the moment, we've got data on 37,000 organizations, live data updated all the time. Now, one of the things that I hate is averages. If you've got your head in the fridge and your feet in the oven, you're an average temperature, but you're not in good shape. So whenever I can, I try to avoid averages. But this afternoon, I'm afraid I can't avoid averages in the time that's available. But what I do want to do is show you where you can see some detail. What I want to do is, if we can click off the screen, this is a test. So this is going to the live site at WorkL. And there's a happiest companies list. If you type in an organization, the organization will pop up. And because they're in the news, I put the CBI in here. And I've done that because it's topical and live information. So at the CBI at the moment, their employees are giving themselves a score of 62%. You can see where the CMI sit against global and industry. There's a whole host of things we measure with actual scores. If you scroll down again, we then have a D&I index, we then have a flight risk index, competency management, well-being. But the thing that I want to get to is it gives you the scores for gender. It gives you the scores for men, and it gives you the scores for women at the CBI. So men are scoring 74%, women are under 60%. There's a huge difference. It also breaks it down by age, and you can see that the younger workers at the CBI at the moment are scoring them a lot less highly than the older workers. You can see there's a bit of data on ethnicity, and there's a bit of data on disability. So I don't have time to pull out lots and lots of data on lots and lots of companies, but if you go there and you're interested in seeing how your organization fares or how other organizations fares, you can find it on WorkL in the happiest companies list. So having said that, let me show you some data. So what I've broken down here into 6 areas is the scores for women against men, and I focused on women as it's our women conference. So average engagement scores, slightly lower for women, 70%, men are 71%. But what we found over the last 4 or 5 years is the scores have been pretty constant. And in fact, out of 3 of the last 4 years, women have scored more highly. The good news is women are trending up. Their scores are getting higher, men's scores are going down. If you look at the average flight risk, 27% for women, that means that 27% of women will leave the workforce in the jobs that they're doing over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. I'm not going to tell you how we calculate it. Men are 26%. Flight risk for women is decreasing, so that's a good thing. Age groups, happiest age groups for women working, to Aviva's point, 65 plus, and also 19 to 34 are the unhappiest groups. If you look at well-being risk, 33% of women in the workplace completing our survey, over 500,000, have got a well-being risk. And I won't go into the questions that form that. That's much higher than men. They're 30%, and the well-being risk for women is getting up. Women are feeling more anxious in the workplace and are feeling less supported in the workplace than they have been over recent years. Confidence in management, 70% for women, 71% for men. And the confidence in management for women is coming down. And then pay. So 41% of women are not happy with their pay. And this survey includes 250,000 women. Men, 37%. So there is a very real gap for how people feel about their pay, let alone the actual reality of pay. And then some bullet points. So one of the good areas is that women tend to be more loyal for their organization and promote it more heavily. So when we look at instilling pride, women score more highly. Female, mixed, multiple ethnic groups have engagement scores have been going up. All the other ethnic groups have been going in the other direction. The unhappiest industries for women to work in, and you can go and see all the industries, all 26 of them, but they are telecommunications and publishing, defense, chemicals, mining, metal manufacturing, retail, and transport and logistics. 41% of women would not recommend where they work to friends and family. That's a staggeringly high number. And in 2022, male managers were 3% happier than female managers. But conversely, in non-management, women were 5% happier than their male colleagues. So there's lots of data around how women are feeling at the moment, the areas for concern and the areas for celebration. And when you start to break that down by industry, by sector, by company, what you see is very different pictures. So when we're all talking about inclusion, I think that one of the issues that we fall into, or one of the challenges that we fall into, is just thinking of it as one large mass. Everybody's the same. But as the very brilliant panel I heard earlier on said, the reality is different for every one of us. So no matter where you are, the data for you is different. And the reason that I collected that data on WorkL, and it keeps growing, is to try and help every individual discover those organizations where they'll be happiest, where they can find jobs, and those organizations where perhaps they'll be least happy. And that's an attempt to change organizations, to change how individuals view the power that they have in selecting the right places to work, and to positively drive business performance and the economy. So that was all I was going to say in the time allotted to me, but I have to finish with one announcement, and that's to say that there will be homework. You're all going to get an email tonight that will tell you about a CMI campaign for better management in the UK. And it comes on the back of a number of stories in the press over recent months where management has not perhaps been as good as it could have been, and that has had real consequences on those organizations. So at the CMI, the belief is that better management will drive better performance, and therefore that's what we're keen to campaign for. It's better for the individuals, it's better for managers, and obviously it's better for the government, and it's better for our economic growth. So when that email comes, please open it, please read it, and please support the CMI. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. I think it's a great tool. One of the things we can all do is look at where we work and vote with our feet and join a place that scores well. I'm pleased to say that CMI has done Mark's survey and we do score pretty well. Anyway, we're coming now to the home stretch. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome two thought-leading powerhouses to join me on the stage for reflections. May I first ask Trevor Phillips, Sir Trevor Phillips. He's well known. He's also, I think, in one of those Q3 people. He is a writer, he's a broadcaster, he was the founding chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. He contributed hugely to the Everyone economy, and I'm delighted to say will carry on that work as chair of our Everyone Economy Advisory Committee, which we are forming at CMI, dovetailing into the campaign that Mark just announced. And no less impressive, I'd like to introduce Baroness Helena Morrissey, also a dame. I'm never sure whether to call them dames or baronesses. No, but that's all right. And Helena is, as you will know, the incredibly prescient and successful founder of the 30% Club that did achieve that target of women on boards. She's had a stellar career in the city as well, and is also the founding chair of the Diversity Project. So please join me in welcoming Helena and Trevor to bring us home. So let me start by saying we have literally been banging on with a great deal of passion and practicality and progressive thinking that, you know, inclusivity, business results, creativity, innovation, they're all part of the same DNA and the same dynamic. Do you think it's really true? Do you believe that, Helena?
I absolutely do, and I'm sure we're among friends here. I'm sure everyone in this audience does too. Of course, you can't prove causality. You know, are inclusive companies more innovative because they're more inclusive to start with, or are they more innovative first and attract more inclusively, like build inclusive cultures. But I think, all of us probably have got very first-hand experience, even if you can't prove the causality, of seeing whether it's our families, whole companies, teams, cities, sports clubs, where you can see the impact of true inclusion. It's also worth pointing out that I think we can always spot the opposite, can't we? And in fact, sometimes that's even more obvious. Obviously, groupthink, which isn't just a nice sort of, a little club of people who tend to agree with each other, but a much more pernicious state of shutting out dissenting opinions. So the opposite of an inclusive environment. There's been so much work done, and again, we can point to examples long ago, like Bay of Pigs disaster, the Columbia shuttle disaster, time and again, this idea that this group of usually very similar people who are very exclusive, shutting out anybody who disagrees with them. We saw the financial crisis. You can argue, controversially, as I usually do by this point in the panel, monetary policy mistakes, because we haven't welcomed other ideas. So I think we can talk about the opportunities, but we can also talk about the risks if we don't go into this, more inclusive mindset.
I think that is a great point. Groupthink is the cause of most corporate failures, says the Institute for Risk Management. But Trevor, do you believe this? Do you believe it's all part of the same ecosystem?
Yeah, I come from a very big family. I'm the 10th of 10 children, and if you come from
makes me feel
that,
better, by the way.
well,
Since I have my hobby.
I've got Helena has 9 of her own, but I had to upstage her somehow. But
okay,
I normally fail.
But you also turned out so well. I'm very confident now that it's all going to be fine.
Yeah, I'm an axe murderer on Saturdays. But the thing that I've always believed is that it is possible to combine difference with unity, if I can put it that way, as long as everybody's open and transparent and they understand the point of difference. Andy Haldane, who's Helen and I are both on board of a recruitment company. Andy Haldane, who used to be at the Bank of England, once put a really interesting idea to me about the way that we might recruit top talent. Because he said that if you've got a portfolio, you don't always select the next share for performance in the same way that the other 9, let's say, share items in your portfolio have performed. You might go not for, growth, you might go for stability. And the truth is that in any successful enterprise, life is a team business, and you look for a mix of things that will make sure that your risk is lowest and your opportunity to spot the best chances are maximized. There's a great California story about it was a YouTube project. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't mention the company. A digital product that was launched. That everybody was very excited about. They thought would be really successful, and in fact, it was very successful. Except that after a few months, they noticed that there was a gap somewhere. They're very smart with these things. They can see that some kinds of people just weren't using it, and all the clever boys, because in Silicon Valley they usually are boys, got together. They tested it. They went backwards and forwards. They did all that brainstorming thing that they do. Still couldn't work it out. Got the cleverest boys in the room together, and they worked at it until somebody at the back end said, "What proportion of people is this thing failing with?" Somebody else says 10%. What's 10%? What does 10% tell us? And some really clever person said, 10% of human beings are left-handed. And they discovered, of course, that the thing didn't work if you were left-handed. And they redesigned it, and it worked perfectly. And then they did the really smart thing, which was go back and look at the team, the design team. And of course, they discovered there wasn't a single left-hander on that design team. So one of the things that diversity does do stop you making stupid mistakes that cost your company, even if you are a $1 trillion company, hundreds of millions.
Well, there you go. And we heard earlier from Martha Lane Fox about Apple designing, she did name the company, an app, a health app, made no mention of menopause, no mention of babies, no mention of periods. Oh, guess what? Why? Because there were no women on the design team. So there's another example. But, you know, Trevor, you chaired the Everyone Economy Advisory Committee. We did this great work together. We published the report. How close are we really to achieving the everyone economy?
Well, we're quite a long way away. I mean, the upside is that we are at least beginning to understand that there is such a thing and that it is a desirable thing, and that if you are smart and you want to be rich, or at least you want to keep your shareholders off your back if you're a listed company, then you need to think about the everyone economy. There was a point, and Helena would be way more expert than I am on this, in which people thought that the important thing to do was to super serve your client, particularly in the business that I came from, media. There was the idea that what you should do is you should identify your consumer segment or your client, and you serve the hell out of them and take every penny you can out of them. Actually, the truth of the matter now is competition doesn't allow you to do that. Secondly, particularly with the spread of the digital universe, it doesn't make sense to do that anymore. You have to have appeal that is broader than just your tiny segment that wants the latest, you know, brown suede shoes and nothing else, because people have options, they have choices, there are new products coming all the time. And by the way, it's not just people, it's other businesses and so on. So I think that the idea now, entirely apart from the social justice and the broader economic issues, just from the point of view of the commercial, the commercial point of view, you need to understand how you provide for a wide range of people. And just a very small example, and it can be really detailed, really detailed. One of the companies that I run and I have a chunk of, it does data analytics, and we are particularly interested in data analytics of ethnicity and to some extent gender, but particularly ethnicity. And one of the most useful one of the use cases of our product is in the FMCG field, in cosmetics and so on. Why? Because if what you want to do is sell foundation, it helps you, and you're selling tens, some in one case, hundreds of millions of units a year. It does help you to know whether Qatari women prefer number 28 or 29. And if they prefer to buy it at Heathrow, or they prefer to buy it at Oxford Street. And we can tell you that. Now, the point about this is that the companies that are doing that now know they have to think about everybody. And they have to engage everybody, by the way, in order to help them understand their market.
Well, now, Helena, it's been some time since you founded the 30% Club to champion inclusivity. There has been some progress, but how far do you think we are from the everyone economy? And are you satisfied with the progress?
I'm never satisfied. So I have to admit, there are days, you know, and obviously we've had several of them recently. You and I have both been quite vocal about the CPI issues that have emerged, where it's easy to get very depressed. You know, it's, you know, you think you've done all of this, and it feels not just obviously for me personally, but for all the women who work, you know, a big slap in the face. You know, you're like, and you've spent a lot of the day, which I think has been completely right, on this say-do gap. And I have seen that a lot still. I actually also think sometimes there are people that don't even say that they support. I don't think leadership. I think leadership is great now, even if people don't completely believe it, they would always say the right thing. And I think it's the gap and the belief, you know, that is perhaps causing them not to quite live up to it. I do want to celebrate, Mark used that word a moment ago, that, you know, it's not just, oh, we've got more women on boards. Tamara, you were a huge advocate for that. We actually got to 40% now, so we need a new name for 30% Club. But also culturally, you know, when I started work in the city, I mean, banter across the desk was rife every day. People would think nothing of taking clients to lap dancing clubs. You know, I was the only woman in a team of 16. When I look back, you know, we've got to celebrate that things aren't like that now. But of course, we are a long, long way from the everyone economy. And I think your data showed that, you know, 52% of people said that they had seen or experienced themselves discrimination of someone because of their identity. And I think we've just got to, you know, it gets hard when you kind of read these things that you think, oh no, here we go again. It's sort of a big lurch backwards. But every time it happens, I have seen that then there's a renewed opportunity, really, I suppose, to rephrase things. You know, it gets kind of tiring for people sometimes. They think, oh, we've done enough on the women. You know, how often I hear that. And now we have another chance to say, well, actually, we haven't, have we? I applaud the CMI for your campaign that you're going to do. I'll be looking out for my email and promoting that. I think we do have to take action. And I think we need to just remind ourselves, you know, my husband sometimes says when something's been a setback, he said, don't let yourself be a victim, kind of resolve to do something a bit differently. You know, everyone needs their pep talk, and I have my husband to help me with mine. But I really think it's important that we don't get disheartened by the work that there is still to do.
Yeah, and I know many people have referred to this word. Trevor, I know that you believe that this word applies to this situation, urgency. It's urgent. So tell us, why is it especially urgent now?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but if I had to choose one, we are in the tightest labour market that there has been in my working life. And the important thing about the tight labour market is that we can probably do some things at the edges, but it is not going to stop being tight, because this is demographic, it is also technological, I can go on about it, but in essence, every time an employer chooses from a pool that is more limited than it needs to be, he or she is giving up value. They are basically spending their shareholders' money on nothing. We need to make sure that we are drawing from the widest pool possible. And the point I want to make now is that there are economic and commercial drivers, but there are also cultural drivers. And if I had to say one thing that I would love everybody to say to themselves in most companies is something that some of us have had said to us: it's not me, it's you. What I mean by that is that quite often companies think this diversity thing is really all about bringing the women up to scratch, making them capable, or bringing the ethnic minorities so that they sort of learn the language and the behavior. Truth of the matter is, we are still in a place where a lot of our organizations are not attractive to people who come from quote unquote non-traditional backgrounds. Social mobility is also an issue here. And that means that in a tight labor market where the employee gets the choice, particularly if you're working in tech right now, I know people, or I've had candidates who can leave a job on Thursday night and be in a job on Monday morning at a 25% premium of what they were earning last week. Organizations now need to understand that the employee is choosing them as much as they are choosing him or her. And that means they have to be attractive. Their proposition, their value proposition has to be attractive. They need to think. This is the point about urgency. We can't solve that problem tomorrow. They've got to solve it today. And actually, by the way, there's a lot of talk at the moment about immigration. We are, whatever people say, we are going to need to bring people here to do jobs. But they have a choice, and their choice is called Australia or America or Brazil or Germany or France. And the more we say, don't worry, they love us because we speak English, we've got Shakespeare and the Beatles, the more we are going to be in that place where 3 years from now, we're going to be looking around and saying, what the hell happened?
Right. No, well, it's a very good point. Now, Helena, I know it's a complex issue. And we like to say there is no silver bullet. But what is the one thing you would like to see happen that could accelerate our progress on this issue?
Well, I think at this stage, I mean, I have to confess, over the weekend, I tidied out I'm going to call it office in inverted commas because it's a bit of a sort of like cupboard, really. And I came across booklets of, presentations that are done in 2012, 2015, 2009, all saying this is urgent. I see the main issue now, the obstacle, which I think we have to address before we can come up with the silver bullet or the answer, is that it's a very chicken and egg problem. And this, I mentioned, I was the only woman in a team of 16 of fixed income fund managers when I started managing money. A woman contacted me recently. She'd just been appointed to manage a fund. And she said, problem is, Helena, I'm the only woman in a team of 15. And I know it's a cliche to say, if you can't see it, you don't feel you can be it. Trevor's point, people don't feel welcome, they don't feel included, going back to the theme of the day, really, that people aren't attracted to the organizations. And then when they arrive, they're not managed well to feel included. So I genuinely think, and I know this is going to sound like you paid me to say this, but anyway, that actually having managers get this, and to get there, we might have to do some, as well as the nice training courses that you do, but some real eye-opening accounts of what really happens when people experience very adverse things happening to them. And it might be, people say microaggressions, kind of, little things. They're not. If to the person that's feeling them or experiencing them cumulatively, and the McKinsey did some piece of work for the 30% Club way back when in 2012, Tamara might remember it, where they basically said in law firms and accountancy firms and consultancies, that was their scope of their work at that point, that women had this debilitating experience day in, day out. I actually think we've got to get people so they understand. They don't just think, okay, as Trevor said, I think, Trevor, you said, get the women to behave more like the men, get the black people to behave more like the whites, get the gays to behave like the straights. We actually got to be truly diverse. And why it's urgent, just if I can add my little bit on that, is because as well as all the points that Trevor's made that I agree with, the issues of today are highly complex. And if you have a very simple task, I always use the example of the Morrissey household laying the table, which is quite an extensive job, but you just need lots of people to do it, and you can do it quickly. If you have a really complex issue, how's AI going to affect our jobs? Yeah. How's, how are we going to really educate people for tomorrow's world? These are things that need a lot of input into them, lots of diverse thinking, multiple perspectives, all the things that have been discussed today. And so to get there, we need to somehow work out how to impact that group of people who are, I think, very resistant to change.
Well, I think that is incredibly well said. We do need the everyone economy. It is urgent. Of course, part of that is getting people to grasp the mettle of inclusive management and leadership. This is core to CMI's professional standards. It's core to what we do. I am absolutely delighted to have Sir Trevor chairing the continuation of the everyone economy for CMI, and no doubt he'll be calling on you, Helena, to get involved in that. And when you get that email tonight, please open it, and please join me in thanking Trevor and Helena for their remarks. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for, I'd like to welcome back Tamara Box, the chair of CMI Women, to the stage, and one of the founders of the 30% Club, I might add, to bring us home with her observation of remarks. And I think we can give her the space she needs, because you never know, she might dance.
Oh, no, she won't. Thank you, Trevor. So easy job, right? Sum up this amazing day. And by the way, I know what you've all been waiting for, and it's the drinks that are upstairs. I know it's not this. So I'm standing between you and that. So I'll be quick. But we have had an extraordinary day. And it started really with an extraordinary speaker who I think set the tone for everything that we were to hear going forward. And that was Martha Lane Fox, who is just fantastic. Better than I expect. I think it's fair to say not one of us in the room thinks she is, in fact, a dot-com dinosaur. She is clearly a visionary. And her vision really did feel like it wrapped around our whole conference today. She told us that we needed 3 things to think about, right? 3 things going forward to have the inclusive economy One, we need everyone to think about, are you in a business that's making a difference? Are you in a business with purpose? Are you in the right company effectively? Are you using the tools for the modern age? She's obviously got a tech bent, but she made clear that really means everything. Are we using the tools we need to make that difference, to bring that company's purpose to the fore? And most critically, I think, for everything we've talked about, do you have the right people in the room? And we've talked a lot more today about all of those things. And I think it was brilliant how that really felt so prescient for everything we heard about. We then heard very excitingly for all of us in CMI about the Women's Network Forum that the Duchess of Edinburgh has started, and what we're going to see going forward with the combination of CMI women and the Women's Network Forum. And I think I can tell you, you should expect great things. That will be exciting. We had a tour de force of Rachel Reeves MP, our President-elect Fiona Dawson, and Anne on the stage, again, giving us a real sense of what's going on both in politics, in the heart of business from the most senior voices. We had amazing breakouts. I tried to get into each and every one of them, so I probably didn't get to hear all of the great things that were happening there. We talked about hybrid working, which is clearly our new normal, and inclusion in that context is so critical for all of our businesses. We talked about life circumstances and inclusion, and some of the most quotable comments came out of that for me. The amazing Alice Maynard, CBE, said a couple things that I just feel I have to repeat for those of you who weren't in the room. Repeated in some part by other speakers later, this idea, and I think Sir Trevor just said it very well, businesses shouldn't be looking to kind of push talent in a certain way, but rather we should have a magnetic pull. And I thought that was a fantastic way to look at it from Alice. She also said something that I think will stick with me forever. I don't know that it was her quote. I believe she was quoting someone else, but she talked about really fighting this soft bigotry of low expectations that we have of people of difference, of any type. And I think that's something, really important for us to take away. We should have really high expectations of our organizations and all the things that we can accomplish if we use all the talent we have. So that really stuck with me. We had purpose-led organizations discussions that, again, got right to the heart of Martha Lane Fox's point. Number one, are you in the right company? We then had fantastic discussions around a digital economy. Again, nobody is not talking about this right now. What does generative AI mean for our organization? What are the risks associated with who is inputting and building our technology going forward, and what happens when that's not inclusive? Again, some great stories on the stage today. Allies, how do we have allies create those really inclusive corporate and business environments? And again, some fantastic sort of crowdsourcing of ideas that was happening in that room. So for those of you who weren't in there, hopefully there'll be ways to capture some of the chat that was coming through from those of you online. So thank you for that. And then the sort of say-do gap, and more on that, and how we have to deal with this perception of, we're doing okay, it's all fine, and the real, gap in the actions that are getting us there. Our afternoon got even better as we heard from Maria Caulfield MP, and what a backstory she has. I think this incredible journey from, very accomplished nurse to campaigner to politician really resonated, and clearly she's passionate about making the difference both for women and to mental health. Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, one of my all-time favorites, and it was fantastic to hear her talk about our 4 quarters. I think it gives everybody a little bit of hope about some of those remaining quarters and what we can do. I think, this idea of from gender balance to generational balance, I'd like to get both of those right as we go forward. So it was a great way to think about it. And of course, Mark, the president of the CMI, and his thoughts on our data and what we have to do. I think somewhat depressing, his stats, I have to say, but I think telling us that we've got the ability to rely on data to help us, lead better businesses, really pay attention to what it's telling us and what that means about the actions we need to take. And so thanks to Mark for that. It was fantastic. And then really, what can I say about that final panel? You couldn't have heard from a better group of wrap-up speakers with incredible experiences and great insight. I mean, we're hearing from two people alongside Anne who have the most experience of really thinking about this through a variety of lenses. So I thought we got the best there. So it really leaves me to say thank you again, echo Mark's thanks to all the CMI team, to Anne, to my predecessor, Heather, who set this up so incredibly well. So I have very big, but very beautiful shoes to fill. So looking forward to that. And to tell you all that the refreshments are upstairs, as is a spectacular view from the terrace. So I encourage you to go up there and network with this amazing group that you have here. Thank you.